All right, I think we are live now. This is going to be a feedback session on Lyle's game together. This is from a group called Raptor Circus. We're trying something new. We're trying to get people to get more focused feedback on a game they want tested and as specific as they want. We're gonna build this as we go, but I want to introduce everybody and then hand it off to Lyle, whose game we are talking about tonight. So we have Lyle. Would you introduce yourself, Lyle? That's
Uh,
Lyle. We have Josh Sutphin. Would you introduce yourself, Josh? There he is. He waved. And then we have Josh Jones, also known as Vaser.
Hello.
And with that, I will hand it straight off to Lyle so we can get right into it.
I hear a vacuum.
Yeah, we need you to mute your mic, Josh, because we can hear that.
Okay. To start off, how were you guys able to play the build at all that I sent out? Like, how far did you get in? I know Josh Sutphin wasn't able to. Well, kind of.
Level 1, finally.
Right. Windows on Linux doesn't do things happily. Okay, and Vince got through like level 5 or so, and then Vaser, how far did you get?
Unfortunately, I've been crazy busy with work, so
No problem.
also
Yeah.
a direct email reminder would have been awesome too.
Yeah, no problem. It's I'll do that in the future. It's and I got out the build late because I've been working on the build all day, so yeah, I didn't expect everybody to play it, so it's all fine. But that lets me know like how much introduction on different things I have to do. So I'll do a screen share, and you can see my game. Okay. So what I've mostly been working on recently is the level select screen. So you go in here, and this is what it now looks like. So these are level nodes, and my goal with this is that it adds more exploration and a feeling of progression that didn't exist with the previous level select and way of progressing through the game. So if we both stand on here, it activates the level, and then I'll just complete the level real quick. Oh crap, I'm really bad at cooperating with myself.
Yay.
Here. So now you can see that node is all lit up because it's been completed. And there's some more juicification stuff that we want to do with that and make it look better. Yeah, and so then it progresses. Then we've got these different things, which are story nodes. So they'll introduce the story, and like how it is implemented is pretty quick and dirty right now, but that'll allow you to get the story throughout the game while on the level select screen and continue on. So general thoughts and feedback, and then I'll ask specific questions. Anybody that wants to say anything.
All right, so I feel like I went the most in-depth with the build, so I'll kind of touch on the points that I noticed. So what you are doing with the level select screen right now is I feel like you're setting a precedent for what the blue buttons do, which is not consistent in what they actually do in the first 5 levels, because in one of your later levels they are not able to be pressed by actual players. So there's a little bit of inconsistency in what happens on the level select menu and what happens within your game.
Okay. Those are different buttons, and we actually changed the look of the one you're talking about to be different. So
In the build I received, the first level with I call him the fairy kidnapper. The button he touches is a big square blue button, which may not be exactly the same as that, but it's a big square blue button.
Right. So we changed it to look all wooden instead of being the same as the ones that the players can interact with. So let me see. Oh, it's not on this level. Let's go back. Let me see if it's in this build. If not, I'll screen share you another one.
I would raise the question at this point, why have the little story pieces be separate buttons or separate nodes on the world map instead of just having them pop up when you pick a level to start? Like, step on since you need two people to step on a level button to start the level in the first place, have it so that when one person is stepping on the button, the story thing appears, and then when the second person steps on the button, then that level launches.
That could be one way to do it. So I don't want story to be on every level.
Mm-hmm.
So if it wasn't consistent in the way that it showed, and it was alternating, like if the story didn't show up on every level, I would fear that people would automatically both step it on at the same time before they realized there was story there, and it would automatically load the level. That's one concern. I also wanted to make it so two people don't have to agree on that they want to read the story, because there will be some people who do and some people who don't want to read the story.
That's valid. So another possibility is you could just change the visual paradigm for that. So instead of having a button that triggers the story, you could have a little signpost or something.
So,
and then if the player walks over it would still act like a button and pop it up, or what do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's just that the visual of a button, regardless of the specific button, but the general visual concept of button has like really specific meaning in this game.
Uh-huh.
You know, it unlocks stuff, right? Like it opens gates and things. And so it's not necessarily like technically it is inconsistent. You have a button that also pops up a dialog box, but I don't think that's that big a deal. But I am saying that by changing the visual paradigm there, and the signpost isn't the right thing, because if it's a signpost, then you sort of feel like, oh, I'm reading the sign. Well, wait, why did Mom's internal thoughts get written down on this sign in the forest randomly? You know, but something that doesn't look exactly like a button could be another way to do it. I'm just throwing crap out there.
Okay, so I actually had a bunch of stuff on that button, and like the story stuff too. I'll just chime in on that stuff now.
So real quick, Vince. So it's good that you mentioned that you think that the buttons are the same.
Oh, we want to go back to that? Yeah.
So it's good to know that you think that, because other people will think that.
Me and Shirley both agree.
So maybe we need to make the difference in them more obvious. But you can see on this button here, it's brown. It's made out of wood. It's a lot different than, or at least my intent is for it to be a lot different than this one. And on the level select screen, this button's a lot smaller, so it's harder to see the differences.
I think we're reading the blue.
Yeah. Is it just the fact that it's blue that's confusing?
The squareness is also a factor.
Anywhere, do you?
What'd you say, Josh?
I said, do you ever use a white button anywhere, or do your buttons always have color?
They always have color.
I wonder if that might be a valid differentiator here.
Yeah, make all the level select ones white or something.
Make the story ones white, so that there's a feel like it doesn't have color, so it doesn't do as consequential of a thing as buttons normally do.
Okay.
The consequential thing is launching the level, because your whole context. Whereas a story thing is not really consequential. It's just this little transient pop-up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Might be one way to do it.
Kind of building off of that, I would maybe, since you're going for a differentiation in the materials they're made of, I think the material that the square button is made of on this screen could possibly still be read as wood because they are so small.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like stone is different, but I think you could maybe find a material that's even more differentiated. Like maybe it's like like limestone or something.
To be different, or I just make sure blue's not used in the levels for the first while until they understand the paradigm, and they don't get confused between the two.
Well, if you're going to use blue, people are going to think that blue means the same thing when they see it again.
Well, there are levels. By level 3, you basically have to understand that colors are coordinated to the thing that they interact with. So you maybe fumble your way through levels 1 and 2, but you get to this level, and red button drops red wall, right? Green button drops green wall. And it is difficult to get through this level without understanding how that works.
Well, maybe it'd be worth it to have it be consistent at least with one of the colors. Like, blue buttons are always for the fairy kidnapper. Or something like that. Like, maybe just the training color is always the same, and that sticks through the whole game.
There's game mechanic reasons why I can't do that, but
okay,
it's a thought. Yeah. Anyway, but I think the root problem we're getting at is there could be some confusion between the buttons and the level select buttons, and differentiating the level select ones in a way could be a good thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's good.
Let's agree with that.
Yes, I think that would probably be the easier solution, is to making your level select buttons like unique from anything else in the entire game. Would solve the problem too.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Yeah. On the story stuff, we had a couple suggestions for that. The button itself doesn't really make sense that it pops up a story, and this is kind of what Josh hinted on earlier in the call. And we were just throwing out dumb ideas, and we suggested maybe it should be a book or a piece of paper or something. But that kind of relates back to what Josh said about it being something other than like a big button that you press. Because it does something completely different from what buttons do in the rest of the game too, you might as well seize this opportunity to have something besides a button.
Oh.
That's my logic anyway.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we also think that the font that you use is a little too fancy for how much text it is.
Uh-huh.
It's a little too decorative for how much you have to read of it.
Yeah, we were finding that out. Oh, we probably won't have time to change that today before I submit to IGF, but something I'll probably change in the future, at least for the story text. Let's change the font for it. It's a font that works well for you just have one word or really short things. But yeah, I agree. Any other general feedback about level select?
I have at least one more. The level selecting, it gets kind of confusing that both players have to touch the same button. It's not that big of a problem, but it's just something I thought I'd mention.
Should there just be two buttons next to each other?
Yeah, that's one solution that I thought you could do, is just have two buttons that need to be pressed to start a level. But that's a minor detail, but I think it's worth mentioning. And then another thing is, when you beat a level and you unlock the next level, the fairies that knock down the boulders I think is a nice touch, but I think it should be unmissable. Or maybe not unmissable, but more noticeable. And like, my suggestion is to maybe scale up the fairies and have them travel somewhere where the players more easily notices them, like they get closer to the screen and then go to the boulders.
Yeah, that is something we want to juice up and make more obvious. Yeah, I agree. So the other unlock that happens is on bonus levels. So you can get this bonus level thing here, top left, and we'll have to work on the. I got it. I have to work on the animation in the level select screen. So you should know that all the animations or anything in the level select screen was thrown together within the last 48 hours. So did you see how that one kind of like popped up and made it bigger and more obvious?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was solid.
Cool.
I wasn't able to unlock that level, so I didn't get to see that.
One thing I would personally like to see on this level select screen, and maybe you already intend it and it's just early enough you haven't done it yet, is something kind of like a fog of war. So instead of seeing the whole map like this, there's a sense of mystery and exploring my way through.
Yeah, I talked with the artists about that exact thing today. So it's a good idea, something I want to do. Yeah, kind of what I want to do for that is have like clumps of clouds, and basically the whole level will be covered up except for like right around the player, and then as you like touch the clouds, they'll like push themselves out of the way. They're like puff up out of the way, and then they'll stay gone. So I think that will be a cool effect once it's in. Do you remember the level select prior to this?
I do.
Okay.
I remember a really, really old one. I don't know if it was that one, but
thoughts on so there's two major things that are changed. The actual level select, right, and you move around and do things. But also when you complete a level, it always takes you back to the level select. It doesn't. Before it would pop up a menu and you would say next level, retry, or resume, or I can't remember. Next level, retry. I think that was, or back to main menu maybe was the other thing. Anyway, or back to it was back to level select. That was the third option, right? So next level main retry or back to level select. Now I just always throw you back to level select and bring you back to this screen, rather than tunneling through the levels and you not feeling you don't. So the sense of progression is like you're just doing level after level, and you're not. There's no overall feeling of progression, which is kind of what I was trying to address.
Right. I think this feels a lot better personally.
Cool.
I like that. I thought it was elegant way back when I very first saw like your front end menu. The fact that it's a little world that you move around in the same way as you do in a level, and so that was good. And then the level select screen stood out. The previous one stood out because it didn't. It was like the only thing that didn't work that way. I think everything feels a lot better integrated now that the level select screen also works that way. Now my whole experience from start to finish, from the moment I boot the game until the moment that I quit, is all in this consistent moving around in a space.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good improvement.
I'll agree with that too, but for different reasons. I think it gives you a sense of, there's a word called denouement, which means like you've just done something hard, and now we're going to give you a break with doing something easy, and that is supplied by the level select menu. It's still a puzzle to move around, but it's like the easiest puzzle in the world.
Yeah.
But it gives your mind that time to rest from the last puzzle, and I imagine this will be, like, it's not that big of a deal in the early levels, but in your later levels, this is compounded and becomes an even greater relief.
Yeah,
you get the menu. And I imagine players, once they beat a really hard level, will just move around like goofballs in the level select menu for a little while, just because they're so happy and they don't have to worry about anything. It gives them a place to play without worry.
Yeah, and then when we add the clouds that you can like push out of the way and stuff, that'll add an extra thing that you can do on the level select that I think will be fun. Cool. Yeah, that's good feedback.
Yeah, those are all good points.
Good reaffirmation of my my decision.
Oh, and it gets rid of looking at text, which I always think is a good thing. The less text you have to show your player, the better. So you're not showing them your retry level menu. You're just sending them back to the screen without any text. Visual communication instead of text communication.
Yeah. The only menu left in the game, as far as like conventional menu goes, is when you're in the level and you want to quit the level. you hit back, and then choose from here. And there's stuff I can do to make this menu better, but I don't know of a way to get rid of the conventional menu navigation.
No, I think you pretty much need this for your pause screen. If it were me, I would just make this more image-based. Like, I'd have some cool little icons that you pick instead of just text, but I think you have the options and do it this way.
Yeah.
This menu feels pretty good.
I think it's worth a couple hours of your time to brainstorm how to get rid of that last menu. I mean, if you feel like there's any chance that you could get rid of it, it'd be great if you could. I don't know. It just depends on how much time you want to spend on it, but if you got the time, I'd at least give it a try.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is, like if you hit back, and rather than having to scroll down through things, it's like a hotkey thing, right? There is no selecting. It's just hit A to go to resume, hit whatever button to go back to the level select, and hit whatever button to retry, right? And there is no other, there's no navigation required that way.
Yeah, there's just a quick, you could like inception a level on top of the level that's just a little world that you can play when it's paused. That'd probably be really hard to do, but that's just an idea that just came to me.
No, it wouldn't be too hard, but I don't know if it gives us any advantage.
I don't know.
Over other implementations. Okay. Let me look at my notes real quick. Okay, so do you guys remember the first few levels in the game from before? Like how much do you remember from previous levels?
I remember them vaguely from what you showed at Comic-Con. I couldn't draw the maps out on paper from memory, but
okay.
I recognized them on site.
Probably the pain point was this level. Before, there was no green button, there was no green wall. You would just have to navigate this guy, and then when he steps on the button, you like run through.
And the timing was like obnoxious.
Yeah, and so most of the time, the first time players played the game, they would end up having to get this guy over the blue button 3 times. Because they do it once, and then neither of the players would be close enough up here to actually run inside. And then, so they'd have to do it again. They'd get him over the button again, and the player would go in. And then you'd have to do it again so the player could get out. So this made the level, I think, a lot faster and a lot easier to like pick up what's going on and how to beat it. Any thoughts that way?
Is there a way that you could like have walls shoot up so he traps himself? Like I'm imagining that the green is actually the green wall that's there right now would be down, and you just
and then when you hit the button
on it so he trap himself.
That would be possible, but you could get into an unwinnable state if one of the players got trapped in there with him.
That's true. But it would solve every other problem you had if you could fix that one problem. If you could fix the unwinnable state, I feel like that fixes everything else.
Yeah. I think this is actually strong, though, that requiring one of the players to manage the green walls manually, because what I could imagine happening with newcomers to this level is the first time somebody steps on the green button and somebody else maneuvers the monster over the blue button, but the person who's on the green button doesn't step off, and so the monster runs across the blue button and then exits out the other side.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's probably the first thing most people would do, and then they would go, oh, crap, we actually need the monster to stop there. Oh, and I can do that by letting off and letting the walls come back up when he's in there and trapping him. And I think having that realization that sometimes bringing a wall back up is also important. It's not only always about putting walls down so that you can traverse, especially this early in the game, is probably a pretty valid lesson.
Yeah, one of the other things, one of the tenets that I abide by in my level designs is every level must require 2 players to beat. If it's possible to do with just 1 player, then it gets tossed or redesigned. So if you had him trap himself in there, then it would be possible to do with just 1 player. So I'd have to add other things and make the level more complicated in order to make it require 2 players. But I like the like that idea of him trapping himself in there. There's things you could do in later levels. I think that's a good idea, something I hadn't thought of before, of having him automatically trap himself on a button that I could use to build. That's a tool I could put in the toolbox to build interesting puzzles later in the game.
Let me make an argument for why that would be favorable. So Josh made a good case for it teaches players about lowering and raising walls more, but your discoverability on how to control this fairy kidnapper, I feel like it would go up if that was the only thing they could interact with, because then you'd have both players trying to maneuver him, and they wouldn't be trying to do things with the button. All their attention would go straight to the fairy kidnapper, and they would both be interacting with him, and their chances of learning how to control him would increase. So they'd learn how to use him faster, but you would lose the cooperative experience. But I would make the argument that they're both going to be testing how he works. So it's better for 2 new players, but for 1 experienced player and 1 new player, it'd probably be a horrible level. So I guess that's where you have to pick your battles. Like, I feel like that would work better for 2 new players, but it probably would work worse for 1 new player and 1 experienced player.
Yeah. Here's another level. I think where it is. Sorry. This one. No, it's not going to be this one. Oh yeah, this one. Okay. So I don't know if you remember the level that shot this, or that taught this mechanic of you can pick up this guy. But this is now that level. So come in here, you can save each other, and you learn to pick each other up. There's nothing else in the level. There are no buttons, no other distractions. I need to play test this to see if that if it teaches it well, but that's my goal with it. The previous one, if you don't remember, had a button on the right side, and it had, so I had like a, I wonder if I can pull up an old version. Probably not. So it had a wall separating the top from the bottom, and the player was on top. There was one player, well, just for easier to describe the mechanic. There's one player on top, one player on bottom, and there was a line of shooters that would hit the player. It was impossible for one player to make it across. You'd step on the button, they would only shoot once, so the player would get hit, and they'd fall down, and there would be no more shooting pressure, right? So the one problem with this design choice, compared to the last one, is you come up here, if you get shot here, then it becomes really hard to get to the boy. Like, you can't. So you have to retry the level. And that is the only problem with this one. The other one, that pressure of having the plant shoot at the person who's been shot down wasn't there, because the plants would only shoot once. But there's a button involved, right? The problem with the button being involved is that players focused around the button and thought that hitting the button in the right manner was how to beat the level, and not learning. They weren't learning that you could pick each other up. Anyway,
I have a lot to say about this level. So, first, I love this level for one reason. I love it because it is reductivist, and it is trying to just do one thing and one thing only. It's trying, well, 2 things. It's trying to teach you that those pea shooters fire things that will knock you down, and it's teaching you that you can revive your teammate. It's trying to teach you those 2 things. That's all it's doing. I actually love this type of level design, and I wish it came up earlier. Like I wish it was more like this. It was more like this in earlier levels where you're teaching them just less things at a time. Like some of your earlier levels try to teach a lot of things at the same time. But I love this. But I did notice that problem that you basically can still create an unwinnable state, which is what you were arguing against in the earlier level. It's basically the same thing as in the earlier level, except now one player is laying down instead of being trapped inside of a cage with the beast. I love, as much as I love how reductivist it is and how it's trying to teach players a few things, the only solution I could find to make this level not an unwinnable state is to add something that's a later game element, and that's the wall that only one player can pass through.
Yeah.
And it's one of, I think, so you're adding in another thing that people have to learn on this level, but you're avoiding an unwinnable state. So there's a give and take there. You can either have them get really frustrated that they keep dying to this plant because they don't realize that they need to make a run for it.
What would be your solution with the other walls?
So I'd grab one of the walls that only the blue player can pass through and just put it on that second row towards where the flower is, and then the blue player could pass through that wall and revive their player, and then the red player could make another run for it. You could maybe even make that entire wall out of blue wall. So the blue player can just keep tapping down and reviving them, because it's not about the run into the canal and saving the person in this level. It's teaching them that they can revive their teammates.
Okay. Yeah, that is a. I'd have to think about repercussions on if that would cause anything. There would be an option of reordering the levels so that the colored wall is taught earlier before you got introduced to the flower. But
yep. And this one's minor. It's make the plant auto fire, so they understand what it's going to do. They aren't being surprised by it. I think that would limit a lot of your frustration and people getting hit by it too early, because then they would see the bullets firing and they'd know that they need to go in between them. And with the blue wall there, even if they got hit really early, the blue player would still be able to save them.
Yeah.
So I think with those two things, I think this level would be a lot better.
Yeah. The unwinnable state isn't the end of the world, because there are levels that require there to be an unwinnable state. So this introduces it to you earlier than maybe. Then it introduces you to it in a place where there aren't a lot of other distractions, which may be good, but it also introduces you to it while you're trying to teach the player something else. Though it could get introduced later if they make this through on their first go, so you never.
Well, if you're going to make that argument, then I would make the argument again that in level 2, where you can get trapped inside of the thing, it's a valid play state for them to end up in, where they get trapped inside the cage with the monster.
There's no way to. Okay, there's no easy way to detect that in code that the player's trapped in there. It would require more dev work unnecessarily. I don't know.
Well,
anyway, we can go away from the trapped inside there with the monster, because there's other problems with it.
Okay.
Yeah. Did either Josh or Josh have any comments on this level?
Yeah. I think that the way it is now is probably fine. I think it is a good point that the flower should be auto-firing from the beginning, so they realize, especially if they've seen anything like this before, they're like, oh, okay, this is a timing thing.
Yeah. The reason that a flower doesn't auto-fire at the beginning is because if it was, it would be possible to make it through without getting hit. And if you tighten up the animation, or if you tighten up the loop so that it fires more frequently so that it wouldn't be possible to get through without being hit, then it makes it super hard for the blue player to make it in and pick you up. Like it tightens it so much that players would have a really difficult time doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is the one thing in this level that I would like to fix if it was possible, but I can't come up with a solution that I like that makes
Blue walls.
Isn't the projectile slightly faster than your character movement speed?
Yes.
So could you make that corridor longer? Like you're only using just a little over half the screen width.
Yeah.
I guess if it was longer, then the blue player's screwed trying to get in if the red player dies too early, though.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what really a solution for that.
Yeah. This has been the biggest problem level in the game as far as like teaching the mechanic without introducing frustration. So far, the best solution that I've come up with.
The blue vines might be necessary then, or whatever they're called. I don't know what they're called. Whatever the blue player can pass through, but the red player cannot.
I have one little aesthetic note on this level, which I don't think would really affect gameplay at all. It feels like the entire level is crammed into the lower left, like 20% of the space, and everything else is just empty and wasted.
Yeah.
So we know that based on the way things are right now, we can't really mess around with the width of that lane. But I think you could potentially take like your top row of obstruction that's immediately above the flower, and lift that and the shooting lane up a ways so that you're using a bigger chunk of the level down on the bottom. And then
you can shift it to the right.
Yeah, you could potentially move it to the right as well, like even center it. Or the other thing you could do, which Vaser actually noted in chat, is potentially add a ferry. It's sort of weird that there's no ferry to collect anywhere in this level. If you literally, even with the layout that you have on the screen right now, if you stuck one ferry kind of towards the top right, like in the center of that empty square space, I think even that would visually help the level a bit. That's not changing the gameplay in any meaningful way. Like, that ferry is totally superfluous, but it just gives you little things so it doesn't quite feel like you've jammed all the meaningful stuff in this corner.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would echo that too, that there needs to be a ferry somewhere. Just because, like, it goes back into your level select menu where the ferries come out and they destroy the next boulders, and it's like, where the hell did those ferries come from? I didn't gather in that level.
That's true. That issue wasn't there before when there was no level select. Yeah, Josh, Vaser, you had other written notes. Did you want to go over any of those?
Yeah, so I didn't. Maybe I missed it, but when a node lights up, are the dark trees? Are there any dark trees on this map?
I have to go. I'll go reset progress. I should introduce some keyboard shortcuts, but instead I put buttons on the main menu. So now they're not lit up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that feels absolutely not enough of a difference to me. I think the primary tone of the tree should probably be darker black if you really want to show them as like having been accomplished or beaten. It just, when I first looked at it, I couldn't tell any difference between a beat one and an unfinished one. So.
Did that change the? Did any lighting in the video just change or no?
Yeah, I can see a light green circle, and there's a bit of a difference. There's more color.
Okay. No, I just quit Flux. I didn't know if the screen capture for.
Oh.
I don't think we're seeing the flux effect in the screen capture, no.
Yeah.
Okay. So there could be more of a difference between. That's good feedback.
And then on the level select, Actually, I just noticed on the start menu you have something very similar to what I was thinking for starting each level. You have these two green circle halves on two buttons.
Right.
Was there a reason that isn't what you wanted to do for your start levels?
This one?
Yeah.
No. There's not a strong reason for it. It could easily be changed.
Okay.
The buttons would have to have enough separation that one player couldn't step on both of them.
Yeah. That could be a problem, but
it's just the only argument for having this one instead of the other one is that it's more compact.
Yep.
For level node.
Yep.
But yeah, the other option could be clearer, and they wouldn't have to learn. Oh, we can both step on it.
Right.
To even get here, they've already learned. We both have to step on these, right?
Yeah. But yeah, as you can read in the notes, if you have like a glowing sphere around both of them, then you can make it more compact and still kind of use all of the positives of the visual cue of the half circles there. So.
Okay.
And then, yeah, if you didn't want to do that, you could use like a rabbit hole or a door or something for one of these, because I like the idea of it being something about traveling or a portal or something like that. So.
Okay.
So
the it's not maybe it doesn't communicate it well. So my idea is that like this is a little forest area, right? Mm-hmm. And so you kind of enter in that forest area into the level, and that's where the level is that you're beating. But maybe there's not enough of a connection there between the node and what the level looks like.
I would make it more foresty. Instead of 3 trees, make it like more overlapping trees, so there's more depth into how thick that bushel of forest is.
It's just there's such a disconnect because once you get in, you're suddenly surrounded by this box. You're in a box. There's walls on all 4 sides of the screen, and I think that's why it didn't really connect there.
Okay. Did you have any?
Yeah, so a couple more. You said something about the story nodes. You're not able to change them right away?
Well, I'm submitting to IGF tonight.
Tonight? Yeah, okay. Can you pop up one of the story things real quick?
Yeah. So this is temporary story. Don't judge.
Yeah, okay.
I haven't found a writer yet.
So why isn't this using the same font stuff as the pause menu? Like, it just looks a lot better if it's just the words and you're still showing the beautiful background behind it. Maybe that could be a quick change you can do.
To do where I have the black transparency that comes over it with the.
Well, in the pause menu, there's no box in the background, right?
Right. Yeah, right.
There is kind of. It's just
the whole screen goes dark. Yeah, and that's fine. But yeah, my main point is that the words there are surrounded by the background instead of by a solid box.
Yeah. Even as something that's really quick and dirty, this feels more polished than the white rectangle background.
Yeah.
Okay. And then another thing on the world map, entering an alternative thing for getting into an area rather than if you want, rather than requiring both people to stand there. It could be a thing where once one person stands there, then they shrink into it or whatever, and then after a little while, the whole screen shrinks down. There's a black circle or a black inverted circle, right? That comes down, drags them all in. Yeah, there's a lot of. I'm specifically thinking of the new Super Mario Brothers series. when they go into a room or enter a door, eventually everyone else gets pulled in. Many Nintendo games do it, but yeah, there's lots of examples of how exactly, like, you know, you could have a green check mark over someone's head, being like, yeah, I'm ready to go in, stuff like that. But
yeah,
and yeah, that's all my notes so far.
yeah, that's a good idea. There's definitely stuff we could do with the transition between starting the level and different camera tricks or animations or different things that way. That's a good idea. Okay. I had another level that is probably even less likely that anybody would remember. Let's try that one. Actually, it's 8:20. Let's skip that. We only have 10 minutes left, or 9 minutes left. So I'm going to do a talk soon at Indie Game Night. For the topic will be something along the lines of creativity, productivity, and focus, or something like that. Basically, want to talk about, if you want to be successful, the most important thing is maintaining focus and productivity, button seat working. That's how you make games and get them done. It's not innate talent or innate skills. It is. I guess it's, if you consider hard work innate skill. I don't know.
Well, you have to do the work before your innate talent is worth anything.
Yeah.
If you don't do the work in the first place, the talent isn't coming out.
Exactly. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to get ideas from you guys if you have any resources where I should pull information from. I know that Josh recommended in the past Do the Work and The Art of...
The War of Art.
The War of Art, yeah. I've read both of those. They were good. Any other resources, recommendations? Good things on productivity, focus, stuff.
Have you read the 4-Hour Workweek?
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like there was... I'm going to mute for a second because I'm going to have to type on my loud keyboard to find this. Hang on.
There's some stuff that some people post about timers. There was one article I read. It would take me forever to find it, but basically what the guy did was he made it so that his regular, like, email and web access, he would have to reboot his computer before he could get over to that. Otherwise, it was just like a certain short whitelist of sites that he knew would only help his productivity. Like just the API doc or whatever. Yeah. And so he's kind of like, he pitted his impatience with the reboot against his, like, getting distracted.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an interesting article.
I would recommend anything about accountability. Basically, like what we're doing here, we're keeping each other accountable to have something to show, is a really good productivity tool, and it keeps you butt in seat working.
Okay.
If you're looking for books specifically, neither of these has to do with tech work, but I think they're very easily generalizable to tech work. Stephen King's book on writing.
I have that on my Amazon wish list.
That book is excellent. Only the second half of the book is actually applicable to how you do work. The first half is kind of an autobiography thing, which is interesting in its own right. But
okay.
And then the other is by a woman named Anne Lamott. It's called Bird by Bird. It is also basically a book on productivity as a writer, but again, generalizable to tech, to life, really. So those are the two other actual books that I would suggest. The other thing that I would throw out there, which is just kind of an idea / a reaction, when most people talk about the kind of butt-in-seat problem or the butt-in-seat solution, I guess, when people use those kinds of things like, tools like rescue time or I don't remember what it's called. There's a bunch of different ones that will like block, kind of like what Vesa was just saying, that'll block out social media sites or whatever your distractions are. That kind of stuff is useful if your problem is that you're not doing enough work because you're busy wasting your time on Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and whatever, which I think is probably the most common problem. But I think there's another class of problem. Like I don't personally, I have some struggles with doing enough work in a day or doing enough work in a week. And my struggle doesn't seem to be so much that I spend a ton of time on social media or those kinds of distractions, so much as that I just have difficulty finding focus and motivation to do the work in the first place, and I'll end up doing like chores and stuff. And so it's not really, I mean, I don't know, maybe on some deep subconscious level that's a form of procrastination, but it doesn't feel like I'm procrastinating. It feels like even if I force myself to sit down at the computer and say, okay, I'm going to be in butt-in-seat mode for a half hour or an hour or whatever prescribed amount of time, my brain won't follow me into that. It won't show up. And I'll be like staring at code and I won't know what the code says and like just not able to process at all. And that I think is something different. And I've talked to a few different people online who have more of that problem rather than the I'm distracted all the time problem. So I don't know what the solution to it is, because if I did, I wouldn't have the problem myself right now.
Recommendation for a book?
While you grab that, I'll just summarize briefly. All I'm really saying there is I think that there's a broader issue, a broader set of causes, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. To address that problem, this book would have some solutions, which I'll add to the talk because you said that. So.
Awesome.
Another note there is eating right. Like your brain really can't function higher processing stuff if it doesn't have enough simple carbs. I think it is, like white bread and oatmeal and stuff.
I'm just going to go ahead and make a request / suggestion right now. If somebody wants to ever do a talk on like nutrition for nerds, I swear to God, I will throw money at you.
I have lots to say about that
subject. That would be rad, and it's something like that's so important, and no one ever talks about it.
Yeah. I'm halfway through my Soylent month.
I think it would be interesting just to mention things that, like, just make people aware of the bad things they can do if you don't have solutions for them. Like, I agree that it's really hard to get started doing something, and this is most apparent when I exercise. Like, the hardest part of exercising for me is getting out of the door and getting going. Once I'm on the track, it's not that hard, but getting to that point is hard, and it's the same way with my work too. It might be just my personality, but that's how I function. If I can get into the document and type anything, I am good for as long as I can stand. Like, it's getting that first line of code written or that first thing written that's really hard. And usually my way to hype myself up is I'll just run what I have right now and dink around in it. Like, if I have a game up, I'll just dink around in the build for a little while. Mm-hmm. I'm like, heck yes, I want to fix this, and then I'll be in the code. And that's a good way to get me started. So if they have something that they can look at and be excited about and see the problems with, they're more likely to go in and fix it. So that would be my tip for getting started, is to play your game in whatever form it's currently in. And if you don't have a playable build, I think you should get to something that you can dink around with as soon as possible, because that's the most satisfying way to design a game. And if you're satisfied, the game will be satisfying. And yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. One last tip, I think. I was reading about good producer methodologies and team managing, and the general consensus that I've found from online articles there was that the best way to motivate teams, which might apply to individuals as well, is to not try to like put positive incentives in, and especially not any negatives. But all you really do need to do is be sure not to block the intrinsic rewards for doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So
that is that's actually really related to the solution to getting over what Josh and Vince were talking about of wanting to actually work and get started. It's highly tied to that intrinsic motivation and maintaining perspective and viewing your goals in the long term instead of the short term, and the way you think about that, which I'll go into more detail and flesh things out when we have time, when I'm giving a talk. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we are at 8:30. So
yep.
Yep. So I can wrap us up if you want to. I usually. Do you want to give out Twitter names, or do you not care that anybody watches this?
We can give out Twitter names.
All right.
Just read lots of anger about Gamergate. Don't follow me right now.
My Twitter handle is @Lyle Cox. It's LYLECOX.
I am Vince the B, VINCETHEB.
And I am Vazor222, which is VAZOR222.
Josh?
I'm Invicticide, which is INVICTICIDE.
Cool. And this has been the first, and I hope to be a long series. I hope you enjoyed it, Lyle. I think you got some good feedback, and we will do it next week with Josh Sutphin, hopefully.
Yay!
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Stopping the broadcast.
Bye.